Good morning, everybody. This is Pastor Rick, Broadman Baptist Church, and this is the Broadman Word for Good Friday, April 15th, 2022. And today we're gonna talk about Good Friday. You know, the event, sort of the crux of Good Friday, really happened between 8 a.m. in the morning and 6 p.m. in the afternoon. So the thing we're discussing here today is 10 hours that changed the world. In Matthew 27, 1 and 2, we read, "Early in the morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people made their plans how to have Jesus executed. So they bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, the governor." So we can see very early in the day there was plans being set afoot on how to get Jesus out of the way. He had disturbed the balance. He had been disruptive to the way of the Jews with the Pharisaic law, and he had also come with truth. He had come as a suffering servant, as fully man and fully God, making some big claims about being the only way, the truth, the life, claiming deity, and these things were just not things that the people had a way to understand, although they should have. They should have got it. He had been with them for 3 years, doing all kinds of supernatural, miraculous things, and changing lives, and witnessing, and just generally showing who he was. And now he finally claims who he was. And it's the original counterculture. Jesus was a revolutionary. He was against the popular tide. And we find the same thing today. Being a believer is not easy. We are a counterculture revolution. We speak the truth that isn't the truth that the world wants to hear. And so there's pushback and aggression, and fortunately not America, but in some places there's murder, persecution to the point of murder for people who claim to believe in Jesus Christ. So what Jesus is experiencing here is, of course, the prophesied way, what had to happen, but we have correlations to today, even in what we see for folks who don't want or don't like the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Barely an hour later, about 9 a.m., in Mark 15:25, we read that it was 9 in the morning when they crucified him. The written notice of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." So he was guilty of nothing except being the Messiah. And when you think about it, the people of Israel, particularly those in Jerusalem, really didn't have a way to receive him. In their experience, they had thought that he was going to be something very much different than what they perceived. He came to not minister to the healthy, but to fix the broken and the sick. He came not to be an exalted earthly style king, but a suffering servant. He came not only as fully God, but fully man. And it just didn't add up. And so they rejected him. And the claims he was making completely upset and disrupted anything that the Pharisees had been teaching them, and certainly threatened the Pharisaic structure of the day. And so he had to go. According to them, there was nothing else that could be done. In Matthew 27, at noon, reading in 27:45, From noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over all the land. About 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? So we see that Jesus must have been not only in immense physical pain, but having been one with the Father of the Father, in fact, being the Trinity, the triune God, 3 in 1, and then coming to earth because of the love that he had for us and the need to minister to us and show us the gospel in living form, Yahweh, God amongst us, to dwell here in his ministry, to disciple us and show us the way, to fulfill the prophecy of a coming Messiah, a second Adam, if you would, because the first one had created such a disaster. He is now fulfilling that, but these words, my God, why have you forsaken me, means that he had to be separated from God because God could not punish a perfect, sinless lamb. So he had to take on our sin. He had to actually, for at least a moment, be separated from God. And how amazingly torturous that must have been to his spirit, to his soul, to all that he had ever been in his life. For now to have God let this happen and turn his back for the time that it took. It's an incredible act of love to see God put himself on a cross for us and take on our sins. It wasn't the nails that kept him up there. It was our sins that put him there and kept him on that cross. And to go through that, to unite all men for all time at the cross and provide an avenue for grace and salvation for all who desire it, all who can be called by God, is just an astounding, world-changing thing to display that level of love. And to think now that some people call that hate because of modern political ideas and sociological movements and all manner of human confusion about how things are. That level of love to have oneself crucified to pave the way for others is now called hate. What a perverse change of circumstances, and what a gigantic miss. We miss it today just like the Israelites in Jerusalem missed it back then, because Jesus isn't what we or what some of the world thinks he should be. He doesn't represent what they want or what their ideas are. It's like the Israelites in Jerusalem. Jesus didn't come as a earthly conquering military style king, so they rejected him. Today, Jesus' love takes the form of purity and truth that the world's not equipped or doesn't want to handle or even attempt to understand. So what do? They reject it, and they'll reject those who speak it as well, even with the force of law, it seems like now. So then in Matthew 27, 57 through 60, we read, excuse me, let me get there for a second. We read that Jesus was taken to the tomb. And so what a sad thing that must have been for the disciples. In fact, the sight of him being crucified was so stark and so difficult, so beyond their comprehension, that they fled from him. And then John, being the only one to come back, and Mary being there and the other women. What an incredible moment we see there with John and Mary. And then, of course, Joseph of Arimathea, who had become a convert during this time, using his own tomb. What a great act of love, using his own tomb to place Jesus in there. You know, these 10 hours were such an amazing sequence of events, but Easter really is the coming desire of all of us to see a risen Lord. But we can't have that if we don't recognize the horror of the sin that occurred then and now that made it necessary for Jesus to be on the cross today on Good Friday. And why would we call it Good Friday? Because it's the day of salvation for us. It's the day of grace. It's the day of love. Because those things were at play on Golgotha on that day. And on display for all the world to see. It was 10 hours that changed the world forever. And it's up to us now to be the representatives of that message, to be rooted in the events of Good Friday through Easter Sunday, and to understand it, to know it, to preach it, to live it out, and for us to remain steadfast in the counterculture revolution of love that Jesus Christ started that day. So friends, don't skip over Good Friday. Take some time of reflection, understand what today means, because it really was the day that changed the world forever. Listen, I love you. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you on Sunday. Sun-up service at 7:45, breakfast at 7:45, sun-up service at 8:45, then of course Sunday school at normal time, and services at 11. God bless.